Hey, everybody. Welcome to Freeology Friday. I'm Aaron Tomlinson, and he is.
I'm Derrick Day. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing good. I see you're wearing your Freeology Friday t-shirt.
I
Was it
am.
Sandra who made those for us?
Yeah, Sandra Whitley. She made these for us. Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so what you drinking tonight?
I am drinking my Aaron tonic. It's lemonade and cayenne pepper,
Yeah, yeah,
sweetened with a little stevia, and that's it.
yeah. I was out of lemons, so I am, at the risk of being judged by all the health nuts out there, I'm actually having a pop. I don't drink a lot of pop, but I am having caffeine-free Coke Zero.
Okay.
So I don't want the calories, and I'm just tired of water, frankly.
Well, guess what? It's keto friendly. If that makes it any better.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not anywhere close to my ideal weight where I want to be, so I'm trying to stick with it. And my light, for whatever reason, is just fine until I decide to jump online, and then it
Yeah,
starts
I
acting like
was thinking you were setting a disco atmosphere or something.
yeah. So it may continue to do that. If it gets too annoying, I will dismiss myself and unscrew it.
Is it unscrew it or screw it?
Unscrew it. Unscrew it. I think it's going out. Unscrew it. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we could just unscrew ourselves?
Oh man, that.
Or unscrew America, or I don't know. Anyway, so you want to introduce the topic tonight, or you want me to do it?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. I'm going to defer to you on this one.
So we have talked a lot about authenticity and being authentic and being our best and most authentic selves, right?
Yep.
And I was thinking this week about how that can be problematic for us, but also for people in general. So I looked up the definition, the etymology. The etymology is interesting. It comes from a Greek word, authentikos. And the first part of that is auto, so self or independent, right? And the second part of that is hentes, which means to be a doer. So it literally means to be yourself or to do yourself.
All
That
right.
different connotations depending on how you hear that. um, and it's interesting, Derrick, because as far as I can tell, it was a common thing in the Greek world, the Greco-Roman world, for there to be pseudo authors, right? Or pseudonyms, or people to say that they were writing as someone that they weren't. So usually it was very seldom that the person who gets attached to their writings is seldom the person who writes it, because they had scribes back then, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about Paul. We talk about Paul's writing, just to make this relatable for people that might have come out of the church or still be there. Scholars say, Paul only wrote 7 or 8 of his letters, and the rest of them are pseudo-Paul. They're written by someone else.
Right.
But it says that Paul is the author of them. So this was actually a really common thing in the ancient world. And so part of this word, or part of the way this word authentikos is used in the ancient Greek, is when you authored something yourself and put your actual name on it, then it was considered to be authentikos.
Right.
And so that's where we get kind of this thing of authentic. But I was thinking about a different way to say it: be yourself. And I remember I used to get frustrated when I was younger, especially, and I was still trying to figure out who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And people would tell, and I was a nervous person. I came by it very naturally. I say that I come from a family of champion warriors and anxious people. It just kind of runs in my family genetically. It just does.
Yeah.
And so trying to be somebody would say, be yourself. And I would get so frustrated with that, because I'd be like, I don't know what that means. I don't know how to even be myself. I don't even know who I am. Right.
Yeah.
And we can go through at various different seasons in our life. We can go through identity crises. We can go through existential crises. Most of us, I suppose, that watch this are either have deconstructed or are at some level of deconstruction. And the term deconstruction, for me at least, meant myself was being taken apart. The way I understand myself, the way I know myself. So if you are very committed to a faith, doesn't matter what it is, a religion, a political party, even, and you draw your identity from that. So to be yourself, if you're very right leaning, which we both were at one time, then to be ourself was to express our opinions about policy issues, social issues, and to do it from a very right-leaning perspective. But now neither one of us are right-leaning at all. You're probably a little bit further to the, I would say I'm left of center. You're probably a little bit further left than I am.
Yeah.
But it's, I'm very flexible with that stuff. Who cares on that stuff as far as I'm concerned. But that means for me to be authentic, if we were talking about politics, for me to be authentic now would be totally different than the person that I was, say, 15 years ago. For you, very different from the person that you were when you were a radio talk show host and that kind of stuff. But both iterations of you, as well as both iterations of me, would be authentic to where we are. So I got to thinking about this phrase, authenticity is not a destination, authenticity is a journey. And just coming back to the etymology of the word or breaking the word down, autos, so if we think about being autonomous, having our own authority basically over ourselves, we exercise the right to make our own choices. We exercise our right to show up however it is that we're going to show up. We don't cede that to a book or to a religion or to a philosophy or to a group, but we are autonomous, right?
Right.
And then doing rather than being, to understand that our personalities are this thing that we call the self is it's not a fixed thing. It's not a noun like we would think, even though a noun is defined as a person, place, or thing. A personality, I guess, if you will, is a very dynamic, fluid, ever-changing, even, dare I say, chaotic process that is constantly evolving or changing or adapting to different situations and scenarios, etc. So I guess you could say the opposite, because one of the antonyms for authentic or synonym is genuine, but one of the things that would mean the opposite of being authentic would be to conforming. And there are times that we are best served to conform. There are definitely times where conformity is in our, not just everybody else's best interest, but it's also in our own best self-interest. And so, if I don't feel like showing up for work and I'm in a bad mood, probably authenticity isn't the best approach, especially for the line of work that I'm in. I can't imagine someone showing up to their counselor just being like, you know what, fuck this world. This world just sucks. Being depressed, I'm depressed too. Let's just commiserate together.
Let's crack open a bottle on that one.
Yeah. So it's behooves me to conform to the professional standards and ethical standards and best practices of clinical mental health counseling in those moments, even though that may not be the most authentic me that's showing up in that moment, if that makes sense. Yeah. So with that, sort of teeing it up with some of those ideas, I'll kick it over to you.
Well, you bring up a really good point. Before I really go down the rabbit hole with this, when we talk about being our best authentic self, I think that there's something that needs to be considered called situational authenticity.
I like that. I like that.
Because you conforming to the standards of your profession doesn't make you any less Aaron. It just means that this is something that you have to adapt to in order to continue to remain gainfully employed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I want to throw that in there as like that was a growing in real time moment.
Well, I changed the title to Situational Authenticity because I like that better.
Okay. Well,
Did that in real time.
here's the thing though. Like you're right. Authenticity is really a journey because if you think about this, right, to be alive by nature means to be in a state of growth. And you mentioned chaos theory, or you mentioned chaos.
I was
Well,
thinking
I want
chaos.
to use chaos theory to
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
Because chaos theory just simply says that the small incremental changes can have a massive effect on a system, right?
Yeah.
So we make these finite adjustments, these small adjustments, and they produce big changes. But what I was getting at is that and we talked about this in a previous episode. The only time when you are fixed, static, unchanging, and even then you're not. But when you're dead, right? When they put you in the box, they dress you up, they put the makeup on, and that's how you look. Pretty much until you decompose, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And anyway, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but anyway, you're pretty much fixed in a place. You're not changing. You're not adapting to anything, right?
Right.
But as long as you're alive, situations change, circumstances change, your mindset, your perception of reality, your perception of things around you, the perception of others, of you and surroundings, all of that is dynamic.
Yeah.
It's constantly changing. So how can you say you're being your best authentic self if you find a finite fixed point and you say, well, I don't change. I don't change. And nobody is that way. Even the people who are the most galvanized good or the most strident asshole, they're in a state of flux.
Yeah.
And they might be more or less good or more or less an asshole or vice versa. They slide on the spectrum. And that's the other thing too, is that we have to look at this as like authenticity is not like détente. Like remember the old channel knob on your TV on VHF, it had détente. It had specific clicks for each channel, right?
Right.
But when you went to UHF, it was more like a rheostat. It's like you had to turn it carefully to tune into the station.
Right.
So
Right.
and so what we have to look at is that that our authenticity sometimes is manifest as détente, but the reality is that it's really more like the UHF dial, the rheostat, or like the knob on a radio, right?
Yeah.
For those of you who remember what radio.
Yeah.
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 You have to tune it carefully. And here's the other thing. I want to introduce a little bit of quantum physics here, right?
Sure.
Because your position, in other words, like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle says that you can know the position of a thing but not its velocity, or you can know its velocity but not its position. And so you have to rely on probability to kind of dovetail the two into some some probable state or some probable location or some probable speed, and all of that is probability, and you never know it precisely. So you and I have known each other. We've been doing this show now. We're in year 5 of Freeology Friday. Amazing, right? and we've probably known each other a couple of years before that. So we're probably looking at about 7 or 8 years of knowing each other. And you're what I call steady Eddie. It's like there are certain things I can just count on Aaron being a certain way, but the reality is that you've undergone massive changes since the time we met. I've undergone massive changes, but we still look at each other. Hey, we're friends, we're brothers, and we see each other in kind of a fixed frame. But I chalk that up to the observer effect, that when we observe, we collapse a wave function, and you get some observable quantity, right? Some measurable quality. And so I think that's kind of what it is that you and this is when I trip out on this, because a lot of times people will get into this and they'll say, "Oh, well, you're being fake, you're being phony, you're not being intellectually honest," or whatever. And I'm guilty of saying that. I use that word intellectual honesty very, very loosely. but but the thing is that sometimes it's not really people being intellectually honest. It just means they stepped outside my viewfinder, right? And
Yeah.
so now I'm not seeing them. I'm not seeing them in the frame that I'm accustomed to seeing them in, because I'm not willing to pan my camera to put them back in focus. Their authenticity may or may not have changed.
Yeah.
Or they may have undergone some change that augments or some otherwise change their authenticity. I just haven't perceived it, or I haven't applied the right observational characteristics to cause the wave function to collapse for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know that's getting really kind of off the trail, but it's
Good.
I'm just thinking about this, that when we're being authentic, we have to accommodate, not just tolerate, but we have to actually embrace and celebrate our changes, however small, and how they contribute to what we call ourselves. And that's where I'll stop.
So, yeah, I'm again growing in real time as we're talking about this, but one of the things that we do, and it's fascinating to me that we really are, and I'm not just talking about you and me, I'm just talking about human relationships or human beings in general. We really are, it is a dynamic process, and we really do impact one another at a very profound level. And here's what I mean. I noticed that our mutual friend Daryl Carlson,
Yep.
I'm going to use him as an example. That he commented, he put a comment up here. It's a great comment too, by the way, Daryl. But if I say Daryl Carlson and I said a mutual friend, and you said, "Yep," it's because we both have an internal representation of Daryl.
Right.
Right. Now, if I talk about, and I won't mention anybody's name, but if I were to pick a name of a person that I work with, I have an internal representation of that person. You do not have an internal representation of that person. So you would not know who that person is, right?
Yeah.
And in psychology, we call these internal objects. And so I am relating to the internal representation of the people that I know all the time. I'm carrying them with me.
Yep.
I mean, if God forbid something happened to our friendship or to Freeology Friday, and I didn't talk to you for 10 years, let's say, and someone says, Derrick Day, immediately I'm going to know who you are. I'm going to have that internal representation that connects to all the experiences that I've had with you and the person that I know you to be. So on some level, at least, we are not just relating to each other out there. We are relating to each other in here, if that makes sense.
Correct.
So you have changed me, if on no other level, and it's been more profound than this, but if on no other level, you've changed me in that I have an internal representation. I have a Derrick Day internally that lives in my head that I did not have 9 or 10 years ago, because I didn't know who you were, right?
Yeah.
But this is where it can become a problem, because why it can be difficult for us to change, or why it can be difficult for us to be authentic as we're changing, is that if you deviate from that internal representation, now people have a mismatch. Like, for example, I mean, this is really a silly example, but when we started this, I'm thinking about this, been 5 years. 5 years ago, I had a really short haircut. I had, shaved on the sides,
Mhm.
sometimes even bald on the sides, really short hair, and I had more of a hairline, I suppose.
You and me both.
Yeah. Now I have long hair and a ponytail, and this really trips out people that I work with. I mean, there's one person that I work with, every time that person sees me, they're like, cut your hair.
Yeah, fucking hippie.
Right? But watch what you just did. You then associated me with, and I'm just illustrating the point. You
Yeah.
associated me with representations of a group,
Yeah.
right? That I wouldn't have fit in before. I wouldn't have fit into that group before. So therefore, I can appear inauthentic. So, for example, my coworker just cannot adapt to the fact that I have long hair. Or I've had several people over the years, last several years, tell me, oh, Aaron's, or they've said to other people, Aaron's going through a midlife crisis. And if that's the case, I haven't pulled out of it yet, right? Because
Wait till he gets that Corvette, folks.
yeah, right. I keep changing and adapting in, to some people, somewhat obscene ways.
Okay.
And this can really create conflict for how people relate to you, especially people that don't like dynamic and fluid processes because they make them insecure. So they're just, and this is not a value judgment on anybody. It's just that our need, let me put it this way, our need for predictability is going to vary just like our need for anything else.
Yeah.
Right? Some people have a greater need for predictability than others. People with a high need for predictability they don't feel safe in unpredictable environments for lots of various different reasons. So when we change, even something as simple as a hairstyle, all of a sudden now that violates that predictability with that person based on the internal object that they have inside their own consciousness of who that person is. And that can create discomfort. Yeah. Now, something as simple as changing a hairstyle or changing your style of dress. Like, one of the things I love about you is that you have many different styles. I've seen you post pictures, profile pics in tuxedos, suits, or show up for Freeology Friday wearing your t-shirt, right? Sometimes wearing a hat. I love that about you. But I suppose that could be problematic for some people that expect, a certain style that is Derrick's style. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Take that to another level. Take that to a more profound level. There were people that their internal object of me 10 years ago, the only internal object that they had, the only internal representations they had of me was Pastor Aaron.
Yeah.
To this day, I have a few friends that still call me Pastor Aaron, and I don't know if they're ribbing me, it's teasing me, or for them it's a way that they still honor me. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not that person anymore at all, right? I don't have that position anymore. I don't have that title anymore. I don't have that belief structure, personality. All of it's different.
Yep.
So there were people that became very angry with me and tried to figure out what was going on with me because I was so violating their internal representations of who I was.
Yep.
Right? And then they have to come up with reasons about why this is happening. So it was everything from he's got a demon to he's got a brain tumor to he started using drugs. Like, whatever people had to come up with. But I understand why they do that.
Yeah.
Because I'm violating in a way, I'm violating the integrity of the representation or internalized object that they have of me, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
makes perfect
And
sense.
that's why it can be hard to change. And I think being aware of this, the key to lasting relationships, whether it's a lasting romantic relationship, or whether it is a lasting friendship, or whether it is a lasting work relationship, is allowing people to grow and experience themselves and manifest and show up in this dynamic process sort of way,
Mm-hmm.
right? So giving each other the space and the room to do that without demanding that you continue to conform to the internalized object that I have, that I'm relating to, which is actually a past iteration of you. It's an antiquated version of you. So on some level, almost all of us are relating to an antiquated version of the person that is in front of us,
Yeah.
especially if that person is growing and dynamic and spontaneous, and especially if that person is authentic, because authenticity is a journey, not a destination. Okay, I'll kick it back over to you.
No, and that's good stuff. So this gives me an occasion to use an Aaronism, right?
All right.
The map is not the territory,
Yep.
right? So we have an internal. I have an internal version of Aaron that lives
Yep.
in my head, right? That's a map, right?
Yep.
But you're the territory. So at any given time, the territory is subject to change, just like topography, right? Maps change because geology changes and geography changes and climate changes, and all of these things have an influence or impact on the landscape, right? So I was thinking about this. I used to have a car that had a GPS, and it was one of the early GPSs in a car. The catch was is that the way it did the GPS, it had a satellite tracking system that aligned what it had from satellite data with what was on DVDs,
Mm.
right? So it
Mm-hmm.
would read the DVDs based on geosynchronous satellite locationing, right? GPS triangulations to find out where you are, but this disc would tell you what was around you, the streets, the buildings, things like that, right? And then it would also have it had real time traffic data, what they call RDS, right? And so RDS would broadcast like traffic, and it would show the traffic on the map. Now, contrast this with the car that I have now, where the map it's basically connected to Google Maps, and Google Maps is refreshed multiple times a day. It changes, right? And so the thing that we have to do, I think that first of all, in order for us to be authentic, we have to give others a license to be authentic. That if we're going to change and we're going to adapt, we're going to be agile or flexible in our mindset and our reactions, our actions, then we have to give others the license to do the same. So I think that part of being authentic, we have to first refresh our presentation, right? So that I think that it's important that when you have a change of heart, a change of mind, a change of action, a change of habit, I really think that it behooves you to at least give subtle hints of that, right?
Sure.
So I think that part of authenticity is the image you're broadcasting, right? So that's one of the cool things about like TV, video, or whatever. Like we're live streaming right now, and people are seeing our images, but our images are a representation of ourselves. Now, if we were to use AI and turn ourselves into anime characters, well, that would be a representation, but it wouldn't be an actual representation. In order for us to get to level set our audience, we'd have to tell them, hey, on this episode, Aaron and Derrick have turned themselves into anime characters, and these anime characters are gonna use their voices Or, we say we're gonna change our voices and we're gonna talk like Alvin and the Chipmunks for the entire episode, right? But we'd have to broadcast that, because otherwise somebody's gonna look at that or hear that and say, "What the actual fuck, guys?" You know.
Yeah.
So I think that when you're changing, right? Um, so I'll use myself as an example, because you alluded to the fact that at one time in my life I was very, very conservative. When I was doing the talk show years ago, I used to promote myself as to the right of Rush Limbaugh.
Right.
That's how I promoted myself. Now, obviously, I've gone through some changes. Now, what happened was, when I first underwent my political changes, my political friends, or people that had a political frame of reference for me, were angry. They were upset. I mean, I lost a lot of friends
Mm-hmm.
behind that, because I didn't tip my hand. It was like, I'm this way today. Now, during this quiet period, like the period between Malachi and Matthew in the Bible,
Derrick silent years.
great silence. I'm thinking about things, and then I come out and no, I realized that all of that was bullshit. And people were like, "No, no, 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 that doesn't work, Derrick." Well, if I had maybe tipped my hand along the way and shared some of the things that were altering my internal dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they might have been less traumatized
Mm-hmm.
and maybe more willing to accept the changes that I made. So what I say is that when so and let me use you and I as an example, because like I went through a period where I was a pretty militant atheist,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we used to talk about this, and used to say, well, like I understand where you are, but I could never be an atheist because this, that, and the other, right? Well, listening to you, listening to my wife, listening to my sister, and people that were really close to me, who I trusted, I had to walk that back, and I said, okay, I'm okay with the possibility of something greater, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not the God of the Bible. That's a whole nother episode. But
Right.
but what I did over this period, like when I went from Christianity to atheism, that was a shock to a lot of people, because I didn't tip my hand. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
I didn't share I didn't share my progress, how I got there. I just woke up one day and said, okay, here we go, guys. But now, over the last couple of years, last 2 years specifically, I've been, you know, I've been introducing my nuances to people who are close to me, and not just people who are close to me, but people who perceive me publicly, and say, okay, these are the things that I'm considering. This is what I'm thinking about. This is what's on my mind. And so now people see the changes and they say, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." I don't necessarily agree, but I get where you're coming from, kind of thing. And so people are less shocked. This does in no wise changes my authenticity. What it does is it represents growth and change in me. It looks like I froze up.
Yeah, you did. I wondered if it was just on my end.
Yeah, can you still hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
So keep
Well,
going.
hang on for a second. There we go.
But you know what? That like is a perfect illustration of what we're
Illustration.
talking about, because people freeze up in our minds and we don't allow them to have the to have movement.
Yeah.
I love
So anyway,
it.
that turned out to be a very timely illustration.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that being authentic, right, is broadcasting a true image of yourself. But when you're broadcasting an image, like, to use the illustration with the freezing up, is like, if it's frozen, I'm projecting a frozen image, a photograph, essentially, right? But if I'm moving around, I'm blinking, I'm speaking, my facial features, my expressions are changing, right? So does this change who I am? No, it doesn't change anything, but it does change the what you see or what you perceive of me at a given point in time. That's it.
Yeah. One of the, I guess, Buddhist principles, and it probably exists other places too, but Buddhism is what comes to mind when I think about it, that I think is really helpful, not just in relationship to what we're talking about, but just life in general, is this idea that permanence does not exist. There's I don't know if you'd call it a Buddhist proverb or koan. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Or just a saying somebody said, but you never step in the same river twice.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that recently as well, just life in general, that everything is everything's in motion. Everything is energy, right? Everything is in some kind of dynamic process.
Superposition.
Even things that appear solid are not really solid, right? But we perceive life to be fixed. Our problem is fixed. Our problem is permanent. Whatever it might be a problem in a relationship. It might be a financial problem. It might be a sickness. It could be anything. But we have a tendency to attach permanence, and that's 100% in all ways. Attaching permanence to something is a projection. It is a belief that we carry that is not real. It's in the map, but it's never in the territory. The territory is always changing and moving. And that allows us then so much flexibility, even in regards to if we want to change, our lives, right? I'm going to change my life. And that may look different for other people. You and I are both on a health journey right now.
Yep.
And so we are changing our lives by changing our health, right? But if we see stuff as a fixed process, frozen, permanent, if we see permanence where there is no permanence, it makes the idea of changing something very daunting. Right?
Yep.
If I think I'm permanently stuck, which I do right now, I'm just going to be completely honest and transparent with the audience, at a certain income level, because I've never made above a certain number in any given year of my life. And so I am in this class, if you will, of socioeconomic existence. And it feels very permanent because it's the only thing I've ever known. It's the only thing I've ever experienced. It's the only place that I've ever been. But I understand that in order to go to the next level, right?
Yep.
Things about me have to change. It's very much related to what I am doing or what I am not doing. So I have to make changes. So if I talk about changing something that appears to not already be changing, you see what I'm saying? So like if it's permanent, if it's not permanent, then it's always in a state of flux. It's always in a state of change. It changes every day.
Yep.
And that is true. I mean, because if nothing else, prices change every day. So what I can afford and can't afford is going to be different from day to day, right?
Yep.
And it's just helpful for me to be reminding myself right now, nothing is in a state of permanence. Everything is in a state of constant change, because then I don't have to move an immovable object. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so it's the same thing with relationships. It's the same thing with people. So I've been really trying for the last month or so to be very intentional when I approach people, that I approach each interaction and each moment almost as if I don't know them. Not in a negative way. I mean, that could be very negative, right?
I get what you're saying. That makes perfect sense.
But that allows the other person flexibility, and that allows me then to know that person in a fresh and different way with every interaction. And by doing that, I may see something that I didn't see before. I may gain some insight that I didn't have before. I may gain some knowledge and some wisdom that I didn't know was right there in front of me the entire time, right?
Yep.
That can be beneficial towards whatever it is that I'm trying to work towards or accomplish or change about my experience of life in order to make it more satisfactory.
And you know what you're saying, this is really good. This is a growing in real time moment, because what you're saying is absolutely right. You're actually meeting everyone you know for the first time with every moment that you spend with them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you a technological example, right? Because we're looking at our computer monitors right now, and our computer monitors render an image based on something called refresh rate. And so the refresh rate is how many times an image is being rendered.
Hmm.
Because the image is you're never seeing you're never seeing a static or a fluid image, right? You're seeing a representation of that. Like when we see people in real life, we're seeing an actual
Yeah.
movement of their bodies. But when we're looking at somebody in a monitor, we're looking at the refresh rate, and the faster the refresh rate is, the more lifelike it seems, right? The better it is. But with each passing of the cycle, whether this cycle is like 2.6 gigahertz or something like that, right? Every 2.6, nanoseconds or milliseconds, microseconds, whatever that refresh rate is, a new image is being produced, right? It's like the old thing of making animation out of Post-its, where you draw a stick figure and in different poses, and then you flip it and you see it appears, you get that gestalt that the figure is actually moving, but it's not. It's just it's your mind playing tricks on you. Well, that's what this is. But if we approach relationships the same way, in other words, and again, this is a growing in real time moment, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I'm expecting a person to be a certain way every time, I'm not giving them the latitude to be their best authentic self. Because in order for them to be their best authentic self, they have to be in a state of growth and a state of change. And so what I may see from one nanosecond to another,
right,
may be totally different.
right.
And I have to be prepared to accept that change without allowing myself to be traumatized by the change, right? So I have to kind of gird up my loins, so to speak, so that I strengthen myself, and not allow myself to be thrown off my square because of it.
Yeah.
So that's really powerful. And if you think about this, man, this is one of these ones that, man, I know we haven't finished the book yet. We may need to put this one back. we need to back through this. Now, don't worry about it, man. I trust me, I understand. But the point that I'm getting at is that in order to grow in real time, you have to be able to perceive in real time. And that means that when something changes, you have to be able to absorb and react to the change, right? And that change may be subtle. It might be something that's imperceptible to most, but it might be a significant change. And when people have significant changes that happen in a blink of an eye, I mean, if you think about this, right? Like somebody can have an incident where they walk through the garage and they step on a rake, and the rake smacks them right in the face, right? So what is this person's perception of walking in the garage going to be going forward? They're going to look around and make sure, is there a fucking rake around here?
Yeah.
And so now their reaction to walking through a garage is going to be different. So let's say your friend comes over to visit you, and they come in through the garage door, right? Well, the first thing, what are they looking for? They're looking for a rake on the floor, because I just got hit by a rake. And so you're like, so man, why are you so skittish walking through my garage? You've been through here a million times.
Yeah.
and what you're doing is you're not, and again, this goes back to empathy too, right? How do we, walk in the shoes of others or see through the eyes of others?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get hit by that rake, but that rake hitting your friend is certainly impacting you right now.
Yep.
And so now you're feeling some kind of way because your friend is walking through your garage with trepidation instead of confidence. Well, dude, I just stepped on a fucking rake, and that's how things can change, and that is not just something like, okay, I stepped on a rake. Whoopee, no, that's kind of a life-changing thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, matter of fact, I'll give you another example. This just happened night before last. I'm over at my buddy Charlie's house, right? And he says, "Hey," he asked me to come by. He says, I need some help with something. So I get over there and there's this big ass box in the living room, right? And so he said, "Yeah, this is my birthday present, right?" So I open it up, or we open it up, and it's a pool table. Way cool, right? And it turned out to be kind of a nice one for one that was no real assembly required. We just had to get it out of the box and fold it, set it up. But while we were doing this, that pool table hit Charlie in the nose and in the mouth, and he was, and you could tell that he was traumatized by this. Charlie, I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just using this as an illustration. But anytime from now on, anytime Charlie and I are handling a large object, this is always going to be in the back of his mind. And I hope he doesn't think that I let him down. But he's going to be like, "Man, the last time I picked up a heavy object with Derrick, I got popped in the mouth." Yeah. and so now that becomes part of that becomes part of his perception of the pool table, part of his perception of large boxes, and part of his perception of me. And I have to be able to accommodate that without being, "Oh fuck, Charlie's mad at me," and I didn't even do anything wrong. It was just an accident. But that's an incident, right? I mean, and it's a life-changing thing. Small, subtle, not really caused by anyone, but here we are. And so you have to be able to look at situations like that, and when people have a reaction, to not get all in your feelings about it.
Yep.
So anyway, real life example, going in real time, folks.
I love it. I'm gonna shift it just a little bit because I think confidence is important.
Yeah.
In this process, confidence, and it's interesting to me because I guess I'm going to brag on myself a little bit here, but one of the comments that I get from people in real life, at least, consistently from coworkers and other people is people will tell me, "I wish I had your confidence."
Yeah.
And I do tend to go into most situations pretty confident. I'd want to reframe what confidence is, though. It's because I don't think about myself in that way. I don't think of myself as a confident person. I mean, I still get anxious and have insecurities just like anybody else. But I think it's my commitment to authenticity that helps. Because it's interesting. Again, I don't know why I'm feeling like Carlton Pearson. I must be channeling his spirit or something. Because, he would always find words while he was talking and then talk about what the words mean. And, and I'm finding myself doing this. But confidence simply means with faith or with fidelity, the con meaning with, right? And then fide is where we get fidelity. Now, the reason I'm tapping into this is because when I was looking up the word authentic, especially in its etymologies and its origins, it was the opposite of adulterated.
Okay.
And so something can be, adulterated. We tend to think of sexual relationships and marriage when we hear the term adultery, but adulterated just means not pure, not authentic, not genuine, right? So when there is a commitment to being genuine, when there is a commitment to authenticity, confidence is a natural result. Or you could also say it this way: confidence is required to live an authentic life, because you are constantly going to be coming up against this problem that we're talking about in terms of other people. That's our problem, right? Like, most people don't lack confidence. I mean, confidence can function on several different levels, but at the end of the day, most of it is tied to the fear of being judged, the lack of confidence. Most of it is tied to the fear of being judged. How am I going to be judged by my peers? How am I going to be judged by my family? How am I going to be judged by coworkers? How am I going to be judged by strangers? Right?
Yeah.
And so there's sometimes we stay in conformity. I talked about conformity as a positive, but sometimes we stay in conformity with something because we are afraid if we don't conform, we are going to be rejected. We are going to be punished. There's going to be some kind of pain attached to the other end or to the outcome, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be thought of as highly. I'm not going to make as much money. I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to look like a fool. Right? But one of the funnest things in the world, if you can get over that, I mean, honestly, genuinely, if you, and I'm talking to, just people in general, if you can approach situations and people like it's a game and just have fun playing the game, right?
Yeah.
It is kind of fun to do something that people don't expect, to do something that's completely unexpected for them. I mean, I don't know, I didn't study martial arts or anything like that, but I've been in a few fights, when I was younger.
Yeah.
And one of the keys, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because like I said, this is just life experience. One of the keys to winning a street fight, is doing something unexpected.
Yep.
Surprise is a very powerful tool to have in those situations.
Yep.
And that can be true of any conflict. It doesn't have to be a physical conflict. It could be any situation. If you can surprise someone and put them off balance in a negotiation, or surprise someone and put them off balance in a conflict, or surprise someone and put them off balance just for the hell of it and the fun of it, it shifts things. If you've never done that, I would encourage people to try that, because it really does. I mean, one of the fun ways, my kid's already onto this, and I don't think he got it from me, but he's been getting like solicitation calls or whatever on his cell phone. Now, God knows why. I'm surprised anybody still makes these, right? Or he'll get hit up by, they're probably bots, maybe, I don't know, but somebody's trying to scam him in like a chat or messenger or whatever, and he'll play along with it, or he'll just totally deviate from the patterns of what they expect, and it's a game for him. Like, how long can he keep someone on the hook? Like, if a solicitor calls you, how long can I keep him on the hook? By just talking about crazy stuff and stupid stuff, like stuff that doesn't even relate to what they're talking about, just to see how they'll react or how they'll respond. So I guess I'm saying a couple different things here. I don't know how I got off on that tangent.
No, that's all right.
Conformity.
Yeah.
So there are times when conformity is the enemy of authenticity.
Yeah.
Because we're staying in a position, an expression, a behavior, a belief system, a social setting, whatever the case may be, that is not serving us, or that we don't really want to be in, or we're not allowing ourselves to be authentic because we're afraid of the social consequences. And half the time we're making that shit up anyway, because we don't know what that person's going to think of us. We don't know how they're going to judge us. And so what I have found is that by being authentic, by making a commitment and being intentional about being authentic, then I can give an authentic response to any situation in the moment and be okay. And that comes across to other people as confidence. And the two are actually kind of related, because if we think about doing something with fidelity, with loyalty, with faithfulness,
Yep.
right? The opposite of, and if authenticity is the opposite of adulterated, then what I would suggest to people is that when you make fidelity to yourself
That's good.
the top priority, or you understand that the worst kind of betrayal is to betray yourself, because then you are both the perpetrator and the victim. If I betray somebody else, I've got to deal with my conscience and whatever consequences may come from that, because I'm the perpetrator. If I'm betrayed by someone else, then I'm the victim of their betrayal, and I have to deal with that betrayal trauma or whatever comes with that. When I betray myself, I put myself in both positions simultaneously.
And I think that's a really good point, because I think that in order for you to betray someone, you must betray yourself.
Yeah,
I think that you have to. You cannot be true to yourself and betray another person.
I agree with that statement 100%.
So that I was thinking about this, that so when we talk about being true to yourself, right? Fidelity to yourself. I think that this is sort of we can kind of make a tangent to mindfulness on this, because if you're not in the moment,
Correct.
when you're actually either reacting to, or let's just say that you're acting in response to something. Let's not even call it reaction, and it's certainly not being proactive, because a lot of times sometimes being proactive will mitigate risk, that it will mitigate problems, but sometimes proactivity can also be projecting, right? That you're projecting an outcome that may or may not be accurate, right?
Right.
But if you're going to be truly authentic, you must be truly mindful. You have to say, okay, just like how we were talking about refresh rates in video, from frame to frame to frame to frame, you have to be in that moment. You have to be in that moment. With each refresh, you have to be in that moment. Because if you're thinking ahead, you're not being mindful. You're anticipating and possibly projecting. And then if you're reflecting, over reflecting, then you're looking at an image that no longer exists. It's already passed.
Yep.
So being mindful, I think part of authenticity is being mindful, understanding how to be in the present, how to be here now, right? And if we can do that, I think that that even when situations change, and let me say this too, like you were talking about street fight, because this is a really good example. That the only way that like, if someone tries a surprise attack on you, if your mind is somewhere else, your response to that is not going to be good. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you may have the right autonomic response. Your lizard brain kicks in, and some evolutionary response takes place. Okay,
Right.
that may happen, but a lot of times it doesn't. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in the moment and you're situationally aware and you're alert and you're processing all of the data that's being presented to you, now you can make an adequate response. So when somebody does what they think is a surprise attack, it really isn't a surprise to you, because just fun fact, I did study martial arts, and people always say, watch a person's eyes. No, a person's eyes can lie to you. Their eyes can lie to you, their feet can lie to you, their hips, their shoulders, all can lie to you. There's only one part of the anatomy that will not lie to you in a fight, and that's the center, the solar plexus, your center line. Wherever that goes, that's where you're going, right? So if someone faints, like they're going to try to throw a jab and then they throw a right hand on you, well, if you watch the movement of the torso, you can see everything that's happening. Because if I throw this up and immediately your response is, to try to cover, right? But you're watching the hand, and the hand can lie. That's why they call it a feint. You can feint with your head, you can feint with your eyes, you can feint with your feet, you can shuffle or whatever, all these different things. You can swivel your hips, all kinds of different things that you can do to throw off your opponent. But if you're in the moment and you're being situationally aware, and you understand that the center line is the one part of the anatomy that cannot lie, now you say, okay, what they thought might have been a sucker punch really isn't. It's you're aware of it. And the thing is that I think that most people in life, they're not trying to sucker punch anyone. No, don't get me wrong. Everybody from time to time is going to execute something surprising, something that's off-putting or whatever. It throws you off kilter, right? Everybody's going to do that. But most of the time, people are not trying to sucker punch you.
Correct.
Most people are not trying to sucker punch you. So if you're situationally aware and something happens and you say, "Oh, well, that was a sucker punch." Well, no, it wasn't really. You just weren't situationally aware. You weren't in the moment. And so when it happened, now you're surprised because you really weren't paying attention. But if you were in the moment, you're paying attention, you're situationally aware, that when this change of information happens, you're not freaked out by it.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Shall we? I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Whenever I do my Sunday morning stuff, I can see the comments from Facebook and YouTube. And whenever we've been doing Freeology Friday the last few times since I've been in charge of kicking it off, driving, we can only see comments. Well, I don't know about on your end, but I
think I know why. I know why, because when I log on, it gives me the opportunity to broadcast to some of my channels, right? And I think that, like, when you're doing it, you're not broadcasting to any other channels. You're just broadcasting your channel. And so I think you'll see your comments. So next week when we do this, I won't broadcast to my channels, and then we'll see what.
It's fine. I can normally I can check those things on my phone. So sometimes I watch them on my phone, but I got
to throw out one more quick thing, because you're talking about people say to you that you're a confident person, and people say the same thing to me. They say, I wish I had your confidence. And I'm like you. There are some things that terrify me. There are some things that scare me. There are some things that give me anxiety. Some things that where I don't feel like I'm super confident. But what I try to be is, I try to be true to myself, right? And being that fidelity that you mentioned, that not being adulterated. I think that comes across to people as confidence. Now, here's another thing. Let's add another layer to that onion. Is that sometimes, and I've been accused of this, people say, "Oh, well, you're arrogant,"
right?
Because they mistake my confidence for arrogance. I'm just, most of the time, if I open my mouth to say something, I'm pretty sure of what I know. That comes across, that to me, that's being confident. That when I react to a certain situation, I react in a particular way, because I know I've seen this sort of thing happen before, and I call that confidence. Or where I come into a situation or into a group of people, and I know that there's something that I can contribute. I can come in and be a value add to this situation. And some people look at that confidence and they say, "Oh, well, that's arrogance." No, it's not arrogance. It's just, when what is the social media saying? If you know, you know.
Right.
And so I don't think that there's anything wrong with knowing. I don't think that there's anything wrong with confidence. And I think that people who accuse you of being arrogant, I think, are probably not being mindful. They're not in the moment. And that might sound like an arrogant statement too. And there I go, blurred up again.
Go, man.
I don't know, maybe I died and I'm a ghost now, and you know.
You know, people are gonna just one add-on about confidence is I think my confidence rose when I realized people are gonna form their own judgments and opinions anyway, and you have no control over that. Like, what is there? There's a meme out there. Other people's opinion of you is none of your business. Oh,
Yep. No, I'm still
okay.
here.
All right. Other people's opinion of you is none of your business.
Yep.
That can be a powerful statement to just, but I just decided I got so tired of trying to keep people happy because that was required. That was required for building a successful church. Yeah. Right. I mean, people aren't going to come if they're unhappy with what's happening. But I think I just got so tired of that I was like, I'm just going to do me and let the chips fall where they may. And a lot of chips fell where it wasn't pleasant for me or I didn't expect them to. But man, it just makes life easier when you're just, I don't know, being authentic just makes life easier. Yep. And so anyway, I was going to go over the comments. There's a few that I can see from YouTube, but that's it. Let's see. Lotus Flower here says, being true to yourself is saying no and standing up for yourself in situations that no longer serve you. Yes, totally agree with that. Authenticity is a superpower that anyone can harness. I love that. Yeah. That's really good. Brian Beal says, that's deep, Derrick. For sure.
Yeah, I think I'm going through some kind of Wi-Fi thing because it's like I'm in Facebook now and it's like it's just kind of spinning. So I think it's a network issue on my end. I don't know what that is or why it is, but it is what it is. Hang on for a second. Let me see if I can.
Brian Beal says this. I like this. Conforming is trying to, quote, fit in. Adapting is, quote, being flexible. Like that.
Yeah, so I'm seeing some of the comments. Like I went to your page and I'm looking at the so Lynn Leach says mindfulness is in the conscious and subconscious mind. And Alan Dean Soltis, he says, can you claim ignorance or take the fake it till you make it route? Hang on for a second. I'm gonna see what can I get here. Hang on, I'm gonna do something. Oh, okay. So we got a little bit of an echo from the previous. So now I can see the comments. So Lynn Leach says, here for the heresy. Oh, man. Yeah, and let's see. She also, I don't know, Lynn is I don't know, it's Lynn.
Lynn's a guy. Yeah.
Is a guy. Okay. He said, according to D.M. Murdoch, Paul's writings may have been from 3 different people. Her pseudonym is Achira S. Okay, so yeah, I remember her. She had another author name. She's passed on now, but in the movie Caesar's Messiah, they cite her a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Being authentic allows me to. This is Lynn again. Being authentic allows me to alchemize and fine tune. I like that. Yeah. Sometimes you need to sit in the mud. Being all love and light all the time is basically spiritual bypassing. Dude, that is a whole message right there. Shannon Morris says, we make excuses for one another's changes. And she also says, my Christian friends make excuses for me. It ticks me off. If I hear it, I call them on it. Good job, Shannon. And then I guess we were talking about the map is not the territory. Shannon says, I love this. Tell them to lose the map. Yeah. And Lynn also says, with change comes grace, give and take.
Yeah, for sure.
Jermaine Thomas says, we remember. Shannon also says, hindsight is 2020. I don't know that it would have made a difference.
Yeah. I love the, again, like another Buddhist thing or something, or an Eastern analogy, that life is rowing in a rowboat downstream, but turned backwards.
Wow.
And that's so true. Such a powerful analogy. It's just so true. We can never see. And I think we need to give ourselves a break a little bit. This is a total side note, but something that I'm constantly trying to affirm people in my work with is you didn't have a crystal ball,
Yeah.
Something doesn't work out, things get messed up. It's like, hey, none of us has a crystal ball. We're all trying to live life like a guy rowing a boat down a river backwards. You can't see the bend. You can only see it after you've been there.
Yep.
It's one of the crazy things about life.
And and if I might be wrong, but I think this was my martial arts instructor Brad who said this. He said, you should live your life as if you're swimming upstream in the mud.
Ooh.
And so anytime you're not swimming upstream in the mud, it's not so bad. But if you train or try to live your life as if that's what's going to be the paradigm, then you'll generally be okay. And then there's also David Goggins, the Navy SEAL. He says, embrace the suck.
Yeah.
Embrace the suck. Life sucks. Embrace it. And if you embrace the suck, then pretty much everything else is not so bad. And last quote, Mark Twain said, your day won't be so bad if you begin it by eating a live toad. So it's just not going to get much worse than that.
Yeah. No, probably not. All right, Derrick.
One more comment here. Tammy said, it's a pretty long comment. She says, I struggle with this. Haven't been a Christian for over 5 years now, but I haven't made a big deal about it on my Facebook. I've shown I celebrate Yule instead of Christmas, but not a whole lot of where I am spiritually on the regular. Probably because I get exhausted with hearing what my old Christian friends have to say about it. There's a part of me that wants to be more authentic and just not care what others think. Just a couple of weeks ago, an old friend sent me a message saying they saw my Yule post and asked if I was still a Christian. I told them that I hadn't been for 5 years, and they said I was concerned, or they were concerned that I was involved with the occult. Your talk this evening is very encouraging. Thank you very much, Tammy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would say, hey, part of authenticity is choosing your level of self-disclosure. Like there's no compulsion. There's no mandate to come out to everybody about everything. It's not even necessarily appropriate to do that, right? Yeah. So if you don't want to...
You don't necessarily have to give everybody full disclosure, but again, what I was saying is that give people some hints, like there's a navigational change afoot, and I think that if you do that, even if you don't give full disclosure on what it is, I think that your changes become less traumatic. Now, again, this is my opinion. Your mileage may vary.
Yeah, but that's a great comment. Thank you. I'm glad that helped. And the occult simply means that which is hidden from view. That's what the word means. So anybody praying to an invisible God, anybody interacting with anything that cannot be seen, whether it's Jesus or the Holy Spirit or God the Father or angels or Lucifer or the goddess Diana, is practicing occultism, technically, by the definition. So every Christian is an occultist.
Yep. That's a great place to end the show.
It's a pet peeve of mine because Christians talk about the occult. They have no fucking idea what they're even talking about.
No, not a clue.
If you want to get my ire up, man, that's one of the things. It's just like, Anyway, great comment. Thank you.
Yep. Great comment. Great show, man.
Yeah, likewise. All right. So thank you guys for coming to our TED Talk. Thank you for growing in real time with us. Genuinely, truly, in all seriousness, really appreciate that you spend your time with us on Fridays, or if you're watching my replay, whenever you're giving up your time. It is your most precious resource that you have. And the fact that you choose it to listen to these two fools on a Friday night is just such an honor for me. And I know it is for Derrick too.
It is, absolutely.
All right. Anything else you want to say, brother, before we go?
No, that's it. Hope you guys have an awesome weekend. And Monday is Martin Luther King Day. Take some time out and reflect on what this guy did and what he stood for. I think that this whole country needs to really take some time and honestly reflect on that.
Yeah.
So
agreed. All right. Blessings, everybody. Namaste. Whatever.
Peace and hair grease.
Peace and hair grease.